Hello, and welcome to the THE webinar, Amplifying Digital Storytelling to Elevate Higher Education Marketing, held in partnership with Canto. My name is Sridhu, and I'm the Deputy Editor for Brand Content at THE. With so many online channels vying for students' attention, universities need clear, authentic messaging to stand out. Our conversation today will focus on how universities can reframe their messaging with impactful assets that resonate globally. We have a great panel of experts joining us today to share their insights on this topic. I will now invite them to introduce themselves. Ellen, could we start with you?
Of course. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Ellen Summy. I work as a DHIS2 communication advisor for the University of Oslo in Norway.
Thank you. Poonam?
Hi, I'm Poonam Maini, and I am the Marketing Manager for the Faculty of Engineering and Applied Sciences for Cranfield University.
Thank you. Lissy, do you mind going next?
Yep, I'm Lizzie Ellen, Senior Communications Manager for the Faculty of Natural, Mathematical and Engineering Sciences at King's College London. That's quite a long title.
Thank you. Lucy?
Hi, my name's Lucy Ward. I work at Arts University Plymouth and I'm the Senior Marketing and Communications Officer.
Thank you. And finally, Roxanne.
Hi, great to be here. I'm Roxanne Lewington, Growth Marketing Manager at Canto, a leading digital asset management platform.
Thank you. Before we get started, I would like to mention that this webinar is being recorded and we'll share an on-demand video and a summary article with all the participants after the webinar. We'll also be taking questions from the audience, so please use the Q&A function to post any questions you have, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. Right, let's jump right in. It's probably an understatement to say that we live in a time of information overload, and in a highly competitive higher education landscape, how can universities use storytelling to not just inform, but to create compelling stories that resonate and strengthen long-term brand image? That's a very long question to get us started. Poonam, perhaps could I come to you to get us started?
Yeah, sure. So from a higher education point of view, I would say it's more about creating interactive stories, something that would, make the audience engage with you, relate to you, give you that human connection as well through a digital format. So whether it's using social media, whether it's using video content, all sorts of different sort of platforms to actually interact with the students. But from my personal experience, I think it's the whole debate between localization and standardization in a global context. So for example, do you do content in a native language to resonate with the students out there in a different country? And can you make that content, standardized on a platform where it can be shared on through different mediums, using other university staff can actually access it and things like that. So I think, it's really important to create content that resonates well with the audience. And whether it be in their native language, whether it be, connecting with them in a human format rather than, just a computerized, standardized sort of information is really important in this day and age, because Gen Z is all about, digitalization. So that's what my opinion would be on that.
Thank you. Lucy, if I could come to you next. As an arts-focused university, how does your institution leverage those digital channels to convey its unique creative identity to your audiences, or do they kind of inform each other?
Yeah, so we have much more of a focus on student-centered narratives. So like Poonam was saying, looking really at the audience specifically and targeting them. So although we maybe have a smaller international population at Arts University Plymouth, we have a very specialist audience that are interested in very specialist topics. So we really like to focus on that really particular student journey and the growth that they go through as a student into becoming a professional, and creative students have such individual journeys with their own creative practice. So looking at individual student stories and how they've explored their mediums and really come into their own with us, just to showcase what students can do when they're here. Also beyond that as well, I think looking at the student journey as a whole and really getting that to flow well. So when we're creating our touch points, making sure that they're not disjointed and they're not really looking like standalone touch points, but rather fitting the full student journey and feeling like a piece of a puzzle. So storytelling in that sense as well. It is a story from start to finish through that whole application journey, and then them being a student and going on to becoming a professional later on as well.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think are the key components of this kind of storytelling or such stories? What elements do you look for to create narratives that are value-driven and reflect the university's mission and values?
For us, that would be things like work placements, professional projects, live briefs, anything like that, even personal projects that students are working on. So
I think they're facing some technical challenges. Hopefully we'll get Lucy back. Sorry, Lucy. I think
sorry.
we a minute there. Do you mind repeating yourself?
Yeah, whereabouts did I get to? Sorry.
Right at the beginning.
Just from the beginning again. Okay. Yeah. So for us, it would be focusing on live briefs and competitions, work placements, anything like that that feeds into professional practice. We want our students to leave feeling like they are really prepared for industry, and that's a huge focus of ours. So any projects, whether they're personal or professional, that can show that development that the students have taken, that is what we'd like to focus on in our storytelling.
Thank you. Poonam, if I could come back to you, are those the same kind of elements that you look for at your institution?
Yeah, so it is about selling the whole vision, where do they see themselves in once they've completed the degree? So that sort of storytelling is really important for our institution. So yeah, I do agree with Lucy on that.
And shifting the focus to the word digital, Poonam, you spoke about digitalization and how it's taking over the world, essentially. Organizations are having to constantly adapt to new trends and platforms and audience behaviors. Yet there is this challenge of staying true to core institutional values and maintaining a cohesive brand narrative. So how do you strike that balance, whether it's on social media or newsletters or on your website, so that the story feels consistent? In short, my question is how institutions can maintain a cohesive brand narrative across multiple digital platforms.
So I think it is looking at like the core of your university, so your heritage, where you've come from. For example, Cranfield's very popular with the aviation industry and the aerospace industry. So looking at that and finding your unique selling points and utilizing that can generate that sort of foundation to build on, the digitalization of storytelling. So I would say finding your niche and then taking it from there is my advice.
Thank you. Roxanne.
Hi, so I just think further to that kind of storytelling piece that you were saying. So we work with the University of Hong Kong, for example, and they have like 100-year photo history archive of like every ceremony, of every, important event that's happened, of all of their kind of historic buildings, et cetera, et cetera. And it was that ability to bring it into that digital space. Even though I think, it was a huge digitization project, but again, it's like that is the legacy, that is like the bones of, what made the university what it is. So you kind of have that historic side of things, which I think is like that fundamental building block for everything else. And then, like you say, the more kind of contemporary thing is like, how do students see themselves in your marketing, your messaging, your storytelling, your presence on social media, on your websites? Like, how do they identify? Can they see themselves there? I think it's such an important question. If they see something that's dissonant with their own views or their own kind of vision for themselves, then they're going to find it, off-putting versus very, very appealing. And I think that's why so many different aspects of the student experience become so important in this storytelling as well. So, not what clubs and associations, what faculties, there's so many different threads to that kind of part of life. And I think it must make the work really complicated for everybody at the universities, because you have so many of these threads to kind of try and express to each of these niche audiences. Do you agree? I don't know.
To follow up on that, Roxanne, if you don't mind, but when adapting content for different platforms, what are the best strategies for ensuring that stories are optimized for different platforms without sort of diluting the message?
Absolutely. I think there are ways to have kind of brand control and kind of rally everybody across different marketing teams across the different faculties and rally them to kind of have this shared voice. So for example, like if you wanted to do, say, localization, things like brand templates can be really useful. So somebody from that content marketing team can create something that is, set to a certain extent, but could also be tailored. So maybe you have different events that it needs to be tailored for. They can change the dates and locations, but it keeps the kind of brand feel the same. Or maybe you need to do personalization for, different faculties where you might want to have a slightly different vibe. So you might give people a different set of assets they could choose from to play with that template and to work with. And the same for languages as well. Like you're saying, if you want to localize it, create these kind of a place where you can work within it, but it's creating rules and not necessarily just for specialists, for people that aren't necessarily designers, people that are, in various parts of the organization, but giving them access to be able to kind of create these on-brand templated experience. And that could be for social. You could have, a setup for a specific size, or it can come down to just things like having, I suppose once you've got an approval process in place, you know what's safe that you can use, what's right for different markets. And then having that in place, you might use things like download templates where it just gives you a specific size, so it's always going to be fit for that right channel. So those are a couple of ways that you can kind of work with all of that content and kind of keep it under control as well.
Miriam, you also mentioned localization earlier. Are there any processes or frameworks that you use to make sure that the brand narrative isn't lost when content is repurposed or localized?
So we've only tested it once at Cranfield, and we've kind of tested it in a very small environment where we did a webinar, which is in a localized sort of format, and we had somebody speaking in native language to potentially sell his student journey and his experience at Cranfield. And he was able to engage really well with the audience, and they were asking more questions back to him than they would to an academic. And I think that worked really well because it was his story and his experiences. And I think that's a different way of telling someone's story rather than just doing, a social media or a poster or something, whereas it's a human being actually talking about their experiences. It's another way of promoting, the university and their sort of journey and their vision and where they've gone to afterwards. And I think that resonated really well. So that's what I meant by localization, because it's really getting inside that sort of market and being able to promote in their sort of language as well as their sort of etiquettes of, promoting things.
Thank you for that. I think that brings us really nicely into the next topic I wanted to touch on, which is, Lizzie, go ahead.
Yeah,
please.
sorry, I wanted to actually approach this question a bit differently, and sort of talk about the journey that we've been on in my faculty, which is actually really reflecting on how to hook audiences in, because there's so much content out there. It's so difficult to capture attention. So actually you have to be more creative, less predictable. And I would say universities need to be more daring in our storytelling and not just kind of reel out the same old templates and same old approaches to kind of sharing research or sharing student experience, but think really carefully about, how can I hook an audience, a viewer in with an aspect of this story, whether it's something very unusual about a research story, maybe it's not the top line, it's not the headline of that story, it's a strange, phenomenon that's connected with it. For example, we have a researcher that's working on prosthetic feet, and he has a whole lab with all of these feet that he's carted in from Sri Lanka that he's studying. So we just went down to his lab, we followed him down, he unpacked the boxes of these feet to put them on display. And by starting off the story, it was a reel on Instagram, but by kicking it off in a very weird and wonderful way, like, what's going on here? We were then able to share that more serious message about the fact that his research is aiming to tackle, to support communities over there with better prosthetics. So, you know, we've, what I would say is, if you're looking to, you know, experiment a little bit more, try different styles, try different approaches, see what works with your audience. And this means having to tailor and curate the content for different channels. We can no longer get away with just pumping out the same message on LinkedIn as we do with Instagram. We have to really carefully think and plan and curate what we're putting on Instagram versus the version that we share on LinkedIn. And that's something that we've been doing. So I would say, you know, experiment, see what's working, collect the data, and then do more of what's working and do less of what doesn't do so well. And we've found what does really well is that more creative stuff that taps into pop culture, certainly on Instagram. So, you know, we've talked about people-focused content being important. I've talked about unusual, original, bizarre research stories, but also things like fun, silly posts sometimes, marking holidays, Halloween, Valentine's Day, giving them a special twist that relates to your campus, your university, your research areas, your faculty, telling those stories in a fun way. So we do, every year we do Spotify Unwrapped when it all comes out, whenever everyone starts getting it. And we do a Spotify Unwrapped for our faculty about, you waited, you know, X number of hours for the lifts that never work, and that sort of thing. And we also do something for pop culture memes that are trending. So we always do something for the Met Gala ball. Yeah, my colleagues who produces content, they're geniuses. They did it this year. We did the celebs whose outfits either adhered to or broke lab rules, because, you know, we were a science faculty. So we analyzed their outfits and we said, you know, they've broken the rules there. They're not wearing, they're not covering up in the right way. So we try to have a mixture of content, the more serious stuff, but the more fun stuff that connects your and engages and grows your audience more. And then they're more prepared to engage with some of the more serious stuff. And I could talk more about curating content for LinkedIn and other channels as well, but I just thought I'd share that.
Thank you. Poonam?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that, because Lizzie made a really good point, but I think it's so important to collaborate as well. So really look at our strategies, looking at data, but collaborating with different departments to bring out the best out of all institutions. Whereas sometimes with marketing departments, we kind of get all silo and we just work in one area. Whereas, like Lizzie said, she went to, you know, the prosthetics department and they collaborated and they came out with this new way of working. So I think that's a key area that is quite important to kind of promote.
Thank you. I guess let's explore that further, looking at that shift towards co-creation, which is an excellent tool for capturing diverse, authentic voices. What role can faculty, alumni, and student voices play in shaping an institution's narratives? And what are the best ways to share these stories across digital channels without... who would like to jump in there?
I'm happy to speak a little bit on that. So the research that we do at the HISP Center is really based on helping countries around the world to create information systems, whether that is for, you know, national level health information or for logistics information, for education information. Tons and tons of data is being collected and analyzed and shared through this platform that we've developed at the university in collaboration with our partners around the world. And it is so fascinating to me because, you know, the DNA of this work is really about the researchers in these countries. It's about the partners around the world who support this work. And without them, we don't exist. So I think that all of this, it's just so pertinent, especially, you know, the majority of the communication that we do, it's not geared as much to students as it is to other organizations, to ministries of health, to other researchers and universities, to, you know, other NGOs and nonprofits around the world. So this has been a really interesting conversation to be part of.
To follow up on that, so my next question is about discoverability, or how you can identify those stories. And is it important to have, I guess, easily accessible channels within the academic community to be able to discover those stories and amplify them?
Yeah, so some we maintain ourselves. We have sort of a community of practice online where we have many thousands of members who can join and ask questions or learn about implementations in other countries. We, of course, have internal tools that we're communicating messages with all of our internal staff. We have, website, newsletter, social media, all the other channels that you would expect. But the online community of practice, in addition to our online academy, where we provide free web-based training for people to learn how to use this software and to customize it for all their own needs. I think those are the two sort of most interesting and different platforms in this case.
Thank you. Lucy, do you have any perspectives on that co-creation aspect?
So being a smaller institution, it's a little bit easier for us probably. So we're not divided up into lots of different faculties. So we have quite a tight-knit relationship with a lot of the academics. But it's always a challenge, and it's something that needs to be adapted for each individual academic, and something that has to be really closely monitored. So we do have good communication channels, but trying to centralize everything is really important. All in the same system, all on the same kind of documents, and keeping everyone on the same process as well. So making sure that we're not getting content for one course and getting lots of it, and then we've got a course that's got lots of gaps and we're not getting any stories from them. Trying to really streamline the process and make sure that everything's consistent, so that we've got stories from lots of different courses. So a lot of our content is course specific, just because we have the capacity to do that with being a smaller institution. But obviously the same could apply for over different faculties as well.
Thank you. Roxanne.
I just wanted to, I suppose, kind of continue on the point of that, having that central place, because I think if you're in one faculty and you're all kind of close together, that's one thing, but many universities have many faculties. They might have different places in different countries. They have all the different specialism areas. I'm going to lean in again on the University of Hong Kong example, because that's one I know very, very well. But they, use, for example, when there's like, say, Chinese New Year and they want to have one campaign, then they can create a kind of centralized location for all of those campaign assets, so they can put everything, whether that's photos, videos, images, promotional materials, anything they have, they can centralize that, and then all the different departments can use that together, kind of from the same central source of truth. So you've got that unified thing. So that's one way. It's kind of collaborative, but more kind of, I suppose, enabled ability to share that and enable that collaboration. People don't have to come and ask for something, they can just go and get it. You can make it readily available. And I think when it comes to, I'm just kind of touching on that kind of bringing those diverse student voices, I think a lot of that can come from the students themselves as well. I think a lot of it comes from that kind of user-generated content piece. I think, like, you can't say it better than having somebody, do a webinar and actually speak their voice. But I think also all those different, all those clubs and groups and everything else, giving them a place to put something in a centralized location so that can be shared with your marketing team and with other people throughout the university, means that, everyone can see what's going on and kind of share in the joy of all those different experiences. And also then, you have that material available to leverage further down the line, to, grow those different communities, grow those different groups, and show that they're represented at your university as well.
I think exploring that bit about the challenges, that some of the challenges that you have identified, what kind of bottlenecks or challenges do you face in I guess putting those stories together and delivering those campaigns, be it access, and finding the right assets or collaborating effectively across streams? I think we have touched on some of these, but let's explore that further. Yes, Poonam.
Hi, yeah. So one of the bottlenecks I think we find as institution is our marketing ideas. How is it going to generate people coming to the university? And it's not generally measurable as much as we think we can. For example, students like to voice their opinions on podcasts and vodcasts, and it's a brilliant way of getting their information out there of how they've experienced the university. But can you really measure it in terms of how many applications has it come through because of that podcast or that vodcast? And that can cause a bottleneck, because it's an activity that is a nice to have and can fit into a campaign component. However, it doesn't generate physical sort of results at the end of it. And I think that's an issue that some institutions may have.
Roxanne, if I could come back to Ellen, please.
Oh, okay. I was going to say to that point, you know, internally in my organization, we don't have many bottlenecks for, you know, actually creating and disseminating the information products. The bottlenecks tend to occur when we are collaborating with some of our other partners around the world. It can be difficult to coordinate approvals, you know, okay, we need this person to approve this quote before we publish it. We need this person to clarify whether we can use this image and this logo. So while in-house things are pretty simple for us, those, you know, coordinating with external partners can make things more challenging.
Thank you. We do have a question about that on the Q&A window. Dizzy, and I see that you have your hand up, and the question is actually for you. You mentioned the challenges or the importance of being more daring with your storytelling, but how do you persuade senior staff to take that leap? What tips do you have to enable sign-off on some of the riskier but memorable stories?
Avoid having to get them to sign it off. Well, I think it depends what channel. We're quite lucky because we're not the main institutional channel. We are faculty. So we have a community of people that we can represent, and we're a bit closer to our people. And so we kind of see that, you know, the way that we would present it is for Instagram, for example, you know, we have identified that that is a channel that most of our students are on, and potentially prospective students. So we need to create content that's going to engage with that audience. And what they like is the more fun, the more creative, the more unusual content. And if we start putting corporate sort of posts out, it's just the stats are going to go down. So in some ways you can use data to convince them, you know, very plainly, this content does well, this content does not do well. We're always asked to put the National Student Survey content out every year, encouraging our students to fill out the NSS, and it always performs poorly. I don't think leads to any more people filling it out. So this year we did something a bit different. We did a fun video with the King's mascot, and we did it based on a kind of meme, and it got a lot more engagement. I don't know whether it actually resulted in any more signups, but at least we were sharing a message in a way that was painless and not boring and irritating for our audience and losing more followers. So you can also engage with the kind of the strategic aims and objectives of leaders in your area and say, yes, we'll help support that really important campaign for the faculty. But we're going to do it a bit different based on the data that we have that shows what works for the audience. And then, of course, they're more likely to be on LinkedIn, and they're more likely to have oversight of what's going on there. So you can save those more sensible corporate messages for LinkedIn. But again, I would say you've got to find a way of framing it so that it isn't just, here's something we've done, but actually it's, here's 5 things to take away about X topic. Here's some thought leadership on this really important issue that you should be, you know, that you need to be aware of because it's going to change your field dramatically. Those sorts of things. It's about tailoring it, using the kind of the hook in your post to make it relevant and to make that person want to read it and not just eyes glaze over usual kind of content, corporate broadcasting from an institution. But yeah, the other challenge I was going to say for us was time, really. We are asked to put out a lot of stuff. There's so much noise within our institution. There's so much going on. And so we've had to start saying no to things based on kind of what I was saying before. If something isn't appropriate for the channel, if we know it's not going to perform well, we'll either try and put the time in to create a post that we think is going to perform better and reach the objective in a better way, or we'll just say no because there's other ways, email, you know, etc. So I think actually being quite selective at what goes on the channels is important, and prioritizing quality over quantity as well. So you put the time in to properly plan and have that creative thinking, inspiration time to try out different approaches and do something a bit more unusual. I think that's really important.
Thank you. Roxanne.
I think, yeah, to add to that, what you were saying, yeah, it's relevance is like so important at the moment. You know, if you are riffing off a theme that people enjoy, you know, that's important these days. You can't be like throwing random corporate messages out there. It doesn't land. And I'd say time and resources and measurement, I think, are challenges for any kind of marketer in any industry. So you're not alone there, because it's tough to say, you know, what was the actual outcome, especially when those things might be detached from your actual kind of campaign. But in terms of like time management or availability of time and resources, like that's a really common thing that we hear from our customers in education, that, you know, there's not enough people, there's not enough time, there's too many demands, there's too many channels, too many campaigns, too many requests. So it's very, very common that we hear this. But it is possible to kind of make some gains back that can win you some time back. So I'm going to just mention another customer, the University of Wyoming. And they say that they've increased creative workflow efficiency by 83%. So this is winning them back times. Another part of our survey is, I think, something around, oh, I'll have to correct this later if I'm wrong, but around like 30% of teams waste at least 5 hours a week when it comes to just kind of either doing work they didn't need to do, running around, trying to find assets, responding to requests, kind of managing things that could be done in a more streamlined way. So the University of Wyoming, they have over 200 design projects per year. So they're kind of really needed to streamline those projects. They brought their 15,000 assets into one searchable library with access to their marketing team, administration, and academic staff can all find on-brand assets, whether that's student stories, whether that's logos, whether that's templates, for example. And then they were able to take a lot of those assets and put them into those curated content portals for different audiences. So I think that saves like a lot of time when you kind of got to the ideation. You've got something that works and you need to iterate it. You can kind of see it all very plainly. You can kind of surface those things easily, make it easy to kind of resize and reutilize. And they also did things like integrated their DAM with Hootsuite. So they were able to take all their digital assets and plug them directly into their tool that they're using to plan and push all of that social content. So streamlining things like that, again, like brings a bit of time back. And then I think I mentioned before, like the idea of templating. That doesn't mean you have to have no creativity at all. I think it just means that you can provide the guidelines that can allow more people to be creative and make that story come to life. And then like approval workflows as well, they implemented them so that they could see, you know, what is the right version, what is approved, what has an expiry date. So they're really confident about what could be used. And having all those things in place means you don't have to go and check somewhere else. You just know that you can go and use it, and this is the latest and this is the right thing. So even though that sounds like a really small point when we've been talking about much more exciting creative things, I think it's often the mundane things that get overlooked and that cost a lot of the time. And it's always worth looking at ways that you can streamline those things to give you the time so you can be more creative and have more fun and do those more engaging campaigns.
Thank you. Poonam, you spoke about the importance of collaboration earlier. Are there any strategies that you have adopted that have been effective in improving those workflows and collaboration between teams?
Yeah, so from a Canfield's perspective, we kind of do things from a centralized communication team. So we do have a branding team who kind of manages stuff from a centralized point of view. So any sort of campaigns or anything that we come out with generate ideas, it has to go through them. So we kind of have that streamlined approach there. They have systems in place where we can store digital assets, you know, in a centralized place as well. So that sort of collaboration happens now. What's happening now more and more in the future is we're going to look at maybe collaborating as an entire university a bit more, you know, a bit more engaging together and not working so silo, everybody coming together with their ideas in one pot and then, you know, filtering it out. So who's going to be doing where and when. And that kind of sells one message rather than like different ones from different faculties. And I don't know if Lizzie has the same sort of issue, because when you have different faculties, they have different messages and a different sort of style of selling the courses. And in that sense, it's going to be more streamlined in the future because of, you know, the digitalization that's happening in the world. So that's from my perspective.
Lucy, have you had similar experiences at your institution? How do you approach that collaboration element?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar to what Pianam just said. So at the moment, it's all quite centralized. We also have everything that goes through a brand team. So very similar process that we go through, except for us, we don't have all those different faculties. So it's a bit easier for us to kind of streamline our messaging because we've not got as many different forms of messaging that we're trying to send out. But it's a very similar process. I think for us, our marketing and branding teams work very collaboratively already, and it's just more so getting academics on board with the messaging so that the course USPs are really nailed down. And, if they're sending their own messaging out to students on an individual basis, making sure that matches what we're sending out in mass as well, so that all of our messaging is really consistent.
Thank you. Lissy, would you like to come in on this point?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say, I think it's really important to have a uniform voice across the institution as far as you can, and guidelines and everything. And that is challenging sometimes in a big university. The other thing though is that having decentralized insight, I suppose, into the courses and the strengths of the courses and what those students get out of the course is super helpful in terms of developing course pages and content to market the course. You really need to tap into what might a student who is considering studying this subject, what might they be interested in? And that way, it's good to talk to colleagues. If you have professional services colleagues working for a faculty or department, talking to them about what they've seen. We have a great outreach team in my faculty that many of them have science backgrounds, so they understand science a bit better. And they also understand what young people are interested in, so they can help bring some insight into emphasizing which aspects of the course are important. And yeah, I think I would also say, I don't know if I'm slightly moving on here, but in terms of that kind of student-facing content and the student-created content, I had a really interesting trip to Singapore a few months ago. And one thing I noticed that was a huge difference between the way that they did storytelling and the sort of content they covered and what we do was there's a huge emphasis on student experience, but not just the kind of I'm going to do this social thing or here's the campus or I'm involved in this society. It was, this is what I'm doing in my degree and this is how I'm making a difference. And this is how my degree is helping me plan my future career. So it was really about the education and the course and what was within the course in real detail. There were a lot of, like I say, student-centered stories where the students were doing a research project and they were talking about the difference they were making to a particular challenge. I just found that really interesting because a lot of the time, we do student-led content, student experience content, but it's quite superficial. It's quite, here's some nice places to study on campus, or here's my favorite cafe, or whatever it is. And actually, it made me think that we need to do more to get sort of into the details about what they're doing in the course that's super exciting, inspiring, and that's going to train them into to pursue exciting careers.
Thank you. Speaking of challenges and innovative solutions, AI is hyped up these days as sort of a universal solution to some of the challenges that we're facing in the higher education sector. So I was curious, how is your institution leveraging AI in communications, and do you see it primarily as a tool for efficiency or sort of as a springboard for ideas, or both? Ellen, please.
Sure. So a lot of the work that I do involves writing about research, writing about software implementations in countries, and these implementations may be many years long, right? So one of the main uses that I have for AI in marketing for higher education is I can feed it all of these studies and reports and ask it, okay, can you please give me a summary? Can you give me a timeline? Can you, call out the main points that we need to be focusing on in this? That's one. I mean, obviously we have some AI tools that we use for graphics, or some other, creating social media content and things like that. But I think for me, it's really about being able to parse through large amounts of information in a short time, because that would normally take, a day or more to read through all of these studies and kind of take notes so that I can write a report about it.
Would anyone else like to come in on that point? Have you had any interesting experiences? Yes, Lissy.
I suppose the main thing I would say, and this probably most people are doing this anyway, but like I was saying before about how time is so important for the planning, the creativity. AI is good for the kind of really simple, do me a social media post on this dull story that I just need to get out. And you can use it to do more of that kind of run-of-the-mill, less, projects where you need to invest less time, but still take up a lot of time because they accumulate. And you can basically get it to quickly come up with something, add some emojis, job done. And then you can focus on more of the creative and inventive content, because I think that content is even more important in an age of AI where, there's anyone can create content on anything. Being able to showcase authentic campus locations, authentic faces and places of your university, and tell authentic stories about people and what we're doing, will help cut through all of the AI generated content out there. So it's about getting that balance right, really, because you don't want to rely on it to do everything so that your brand just becomes, it's no longer authentic.
Thank you. Poonam, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so just on the other side of that, I think I just heard a BBC article today about people fearing about AI taking over people's jobs. And from that perspective, we use it as my personal experience is I would put something together, content like for email campaign, for example, and then feed it through AI, a system like ChatGPT, and then it will pull out something that's sounds far more better. However, you will notice that some of the wordings is very, very similar over time. And so you still need that human interaction to go in there and make those changes. And I think when people start fearing, oh yeah, my job's on the line in that sort of sense, it's not really, because without a human being able to look into the detail of it, you still need somebody to come in and actually make those changes so it doesn't sound so robotic. And I also think that, a lot of graphic designers are kind of fearful as well, because some systems can create these fantastic sort of illustrations. However, you still need a human person to come in and have a look at that and make changes and things like that. So from that perspective, I think although AI is a great tool to be assisted, it's not something to be fearful of. So that's what I would say on that basis.
Thank you. Roxanne.
Yeah, I'll second that AI is a tool, and I think we've had so much hype, and I've been working in technology for a while, and it's coming up to 10 years that people have been talking about AI. And obviously it's had this huge boost where everybody's got the large language models, we've got the generative AI, but that's taken so much of the focus. And I think sometimes people forget AI is a tool that can do many things. There are many types of AI and they'll all do different jobs for you. You just have to find the right one and tell it what to do. So I think there are other, and I've said this before, I think we want AI to do the boring stuff. Like you say, you want it to do the posts that aren't engaging, that aren't just, but you just kind of have to do them as a matter of course. You don't want them to be doing the fun stuff, the creative stuff. Yes, use them for ideation, but the designers got that design in their head, and that the way that you can get that design out into AI and ideate on it is getting better and better. But it's the agentic stuff, it's the organization stuff, I think, that gets me excited. Is, we can have, there are mundane jobs, people with, I know I'm coming from a digital asset background again, it's that, people had to manually tag everything. Everything you wanted to say about that had to be manually added. That is not the case. You can get it to do smart tags. You can use AI visual search that looks at it like a person and will just find the thing you're describing. I want to see, two people having a picnic on the green outside a building in the sunshine, smiling. It'll find that image if that's what you want for your campaign, if it's in your library. So I think there's a lot of, it can be used to coordinate, categorize, identify things. The agentic stuff for analysis, I think, is really interesting. And I'm just looking forward to the day when I can literally have an assistant, because that's kind of it. We have to, program our own assistant, really. so it's good, but I think, like I say, it's the hype. Don't get caught up in it. Authenticity is still super important. That was so important for years. Everything was authenticity, and now it's like AI and speed, but we can't forget authenticity, because when it comes to brands, it's so important, and people are investing a lot of time and money into universities. So that's a really big brand decision. Obviously it's a lot about the choice of the course and the fit, everything else as well. I know I was very picky about where I went because I wanted a placement year, and that was really important to me. And everybody else has their own priorities. But yeah, I think we need to be open to leaning on it, but with guardrails is how I look at it, definitely.
Thank you. Ellen?
I just wanted to add, Roxanne, to your point about agentic AI, you reminded me of another tool that I'm actually using that is able to pull all of the content from social media posts on any of our platforms and condense or put all of those into a spreadsheet for me that helps me track, content, date, time, platform, links, images, all that kind of stuff. And it's so helpful to then have a searchable sort of database of all of the social media posts that we have shared. So that I thought was another a great use of AI.
Roxanne mentioned guardrails, and that brings me to the final topic that I wanted to discuss today, which is about data security and compliance. So what kind of governance frameworks or policies can institutions implement to balance or find that balance of security and compliance and ease of use across platforms, especially when using emerging tools like AI? Roxanne, could I come back to you on that point?
Yeah, absolutely. I think because education institutions typically have a lot of imagery with students, with faculty members, there is a degree of like a need for security. I'm speaking in the kind of marketing space. And again, that speaks to the authenticity as well. And I think with that, you have to be very mindful about the different processes that you put in place when you're capturing these videos and images. How are you recording that consent? How are you adding that to the system? How are you able to communicate that to everybody that has access to those images and videos? Is it clearly, easily for them to see, I can, what is an okay to use and what isn't? And again, with one of these centralized libraries like a DAM, like Canto, you can have expiry dates, approval dates, you can record digital rights, you can have things watermarked, so whether if you have a press portal, maybe it has photos that are of include students or faculty members. But rather than just being able to download that image, they actually have to submit a request for that image. So then you can make sure that they have all the information, it's treated correctly. So I think those are kind of some of the things that people can put in place just for their security. And I think also, like with any partners that you do work with and any software that you do work with, making sure that it's one of those kind of secure and compliant technologies, that they have the SOC 2, that they have the compliance in all the areas that you need it. Are they doing NIST, if it's healthcare, is it HIPAA? There's a lot of different places and different types of legislation around the world regarding your security and compliance. So I think one of the things is just being aware of the people that you're working with and making sure that you have your own internal practices set up correctly, but also you trust the partners that you're working with too.
Thank you. Ellen, I know you have prepared a couple of slides to illustrate that point and present some use cases on digital rights. So please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I'm really excited. Thank you, Roxanne. I'm super excited to kind of share a little bit more about the work that we do today. Roxanne, you can go to the next slide. So I can't really tell the story about what we do without first telling you a little bit about the HISP Center and about this open source software that I've mentioned. So the HISP Center is an interdisciplinary center at the University of Oslo, and it's all about research, particularly in terms of global health. So one of the primary goals is that they help low and middle income countries to develop and deploy digital tools to monitor public health, combat and prevent pandemics, manage treatment programs, and very, very, very much more. Next slide, please. So the primary tool that they're using to do this is called DHIS2. So this is the free open source platform that I mentioned. It's flexible across many different domains. It's used for collecting, managing, analyzing, and sharing data. It was born actually out of a joint research effort in 1994, so 30 years ago. This was a joint effort between the University of Oslo and the University of the Western Cape in South Africa. And we maintain it now and develop it with partners in 23 different countries. Next, please.
Sorry.
So just some numbers to kind of give you a sense of the scale that we're talking about. DHIS2 is today the world's largest health management information system platform. It is used at national scale in 75 countries, which means that, you know, it touches 40% of the world's population. So it's huge. It's a huge project. And though it is most commonly used in health, we are seeing more growth in terms of using this software also for education, logistics, climate data, and more. You can go next. So, you know, I feel like I would be remiss not to talk very briefly about DHIS2 for education. It's very particular or very relevant to today's conversation. These tools that we have now in DHIS2 for education, they encompass tons of things from student, staff, and school management, monitoring and reporting, school-based health programs, and this is being used in 13 countries now and growing. Next. So that really brings us to the conversation about digital rights and access. You know, I mentioned that we work with these 25 partner groups around the world, which means we have quite a large number of people who are accessing our digital assets. So what we have done, we do use Canto, and each of these partner groups are able to have their own portal, and they have a power user role. You know, that person can upload and manage digital assets there. Next. And then very quickly to talk a little more about digital rights and access. This is what you see in our Canto system. It's going to be a little bit small, but along the left there, each of these international groups has their own portal. And you see on the right, we can tag any of these photos by the country that they represent, the group that they represent. There's lots and lots of data that we can include there. Next. Then to talk briefly about collecting and managing assets from around the globe. This, what you're looking at, is an example of a public portal that we created for our annual conference in June. It allowed attendees to upload photos and videos directly, which was really helpful for us. And if you go to the next slide, you can see a little about what that looks like from my perspective when I log in. So that's the back of my head. I'm standing there trying to direct this large group of conference attendees. We were going to do a video shoot for social media, so I had to shout out directions. But the point to see here is on the right? I'm able to tag the type of event, the group that was involved. For us, if it's a photo of software, I want to note any kind of device or interaction, which team, which year was it taken, what type of asset, and much, much more. And then down at the bottom, of course, we can select from the drop down the sort of consent that we have for this photo. So this one falls under the general terms and conditions consent for our conference. So you can go next.
That was the last one.
Yep.
Okay, thanks very much, Ellen. I appreciate you showing us that. It's kind of really good to see actually a bit more practically how that kind of can all come together. So I do want to talk a little bit about digital asset management and how that can help unlock your content and its content's potential with this searchable library. It can be a fundamental tool in your toolbox that can really help amplify your storytelling and scale brand identity. I think I mentioned we have an annual survey that we conduct in America and the UK. We have, and it found that 34% of higher education marketers found that aligning teams for effective collaboration and efficient workflows was actually quite challenging. Maybe that's something that resonates with you, but that was kind of what our survey found. It's quite common. So with digital asset management, it can help you overcome a lot of these programs. So, if you have aggressive recruitment goals, you create those templates that can be adapted to different markets, automate some of those manual, oh, I've lost the screen, and time-consuming tasks. Then You can easily distribute that on-brand content, whether that's through internally, externally with links, different curated sets of content. Use AI to kind of tag, organize, dedupe, find, check, whether that's facial recognition, whether that's an individual asset, whether you're kind of want to check through things. AI and the capabilities that it has in this context are just expanding, and how they can help people organize and find and sort and use their assets, and then managing digital rights, version control, access control, all in one place. That gives you that peace of mind that you know that assets are being used correctly. We talked about creating collections of content, so that could be again internally or externally shared through the portal, a bit like you showed before, and those can serve so many different purposes, whether that is, you know, the clubs and the organizations, whether it is a faculty, whether it's an event, all of these things. It's very, very easy to strike up a kind of branded space for all of those assets to live, which helps you engage all of those people that are involved with those activity. Maximize return on investment for your content, and empower staff. You know, give people access, give people time back. They're not dealing with requests, so this is all very helpful. And then integrations. I think this is a key piece at the moment. Is, you know, having that connected content ecosystem. So the tools that you're using, you don't have to go out with them to go and get what you need. You can just use what you need from the tools you're working with. So if you're designing something in, you know, Figma or any of the Adobe suite, you can just literally grab the things and drop them into your design projects right there. I'll quickly hop on to this next slide, so we have a little bit of time for follow-up, but we have this is a kind of visual representation really of that whole content life cycle. So whether you're having that campaign ideation, when you're, you know, thinking deeply about who your audiences are, who you're creating, that you're building out projects, let's link that back into the actual physical projects you're working with and the content you're working on. Your creative tools, I mentioned, you can go in and grab the things from where you're working, not have to upload and download. Cloud storage solutions, whether that's syncing or ingesting, that can be super helpful. Also, you know, with your marketing, whether you're using HubSpot or maybe you're using MailChimp, etc., being able to pull those assets in. We have a great workflow, which I love, in our marketing team. So we have a folder of approved brand assets in our library. And when I'm in Canva making the headers for my emails, I'm able to just go in and grab the images that I want, use our templates, and very, very quickly make that, and then actually export that directly into HubSpot. So I don't have to upload or download anything, which is saving my downloads folder and my sanity, I can tell you. Distribution, so not just distributing through portals, but also, you know, feeding out into your websites. How do you know that, you know, your website image is up to date? You know, how do you make sure that anything, if you change it in the back end, those changes are reflected in your website? So it gives you a lot of control there. Distribution, we talked a lot about social media today. I think that's obviously one of the key channels. So being able to pull assets, resize them, push them straight into your different social platforms or your organized social tools. And then analytics, again, becoming more and more important. You know, how do you know what are people looking for when they're trying to find things to create marketing projects or creative projects? Are they able to find those things? What have you put out there that's not being used, and why isn't it being used? Or do you have a portal that you share with a specific audience but it hasn't been accessed? You know, is that something you can dig into to make sure you're getting the engagement that you want? So, you know, an integrated and automated tech stack with a DAM at the heart of it, you know, is a central hub for your brand and your content ecosystem, meaning that it's an easy place for you to find, use, and work from all of your content. Last slide from me now. I just want to get everybody a little bit excited and amped up. There is something very exciting coming, a news from Canto. The future of DAM is closer than you think. You know, we invented DAM 35 so years ago. Now we are reinventing it. So please keep an eye on your inbox for any updates on this. It might just change how you think about digital asset management and what you can do for your organization. But I'd be remiss, because this is new news. I think this is the first place this is actually going out that I'm even hinting that something's coming. So exclusive coming soon. Keep your ear to the ground. Thanks.
Thank you, Roxanne. We have several wonderful questions from the participants, but unfortunately we only have time for one.
Oops, sorry.
That's okay. So really quickly, we have a question from an audience member on brand consistency. So any advice for increasing compliance, especially in instances where colleagues may consider the brand guidelines optional and create their own non-compliant brand assets? Poonam, would you like to chime in with any advice that you have?
I mean, we work things from a centralized point of view, so we have guidelines that we have to follow. There's no sort of leeway in there. But I don't know if anybody else can maybe put some input into that.
No problem. I'll move on to the next question. What are the best strategies to evaluate the impact of digital campaigns? How do you manage expectations around the data that you can collect and the results that you can show, especially in campaigns that focus on increasing brand awareness? Who would like to quickly chime in? We are almost out of time.
We use a system, something called Zoho, which is quite good, and we kind of collate all the data that comes through our campaigns in terms of our UTM. So we measure how trackable it is, how well our campaigns or our advertising is doing, and then we kind of store it all in one place, and then we're able to present it through a dashboard, which is quite useful for us. So that's what we do in our campaign measurements.
Thank you so much. That's all the time we have today. I hope everyone found the conversation insightful. Many thanks to our panelists for sharing their insights and for being with us today, and to everyone in the audience for joining us and posting those amazing questions. Apologies for not being able to cover those. We will share the recording of this webinar and a post-event summary article with you in the coming days. Thank you once again, and goodbye.